whether you're a solopreneur, a micro business, or you have, multi-millions, etc. The important thing here is to recognize, where can I build more leverage in my business by utilizing AI?
Well, hey, Amanda here, and welcome to the Amanda Kaufman Show. And today we're going to dive into all things AI and operations for service-based businesses with my friend, Patty Dominguez. So Patty is the founder of moreleverage.io, and we are friends from a incubator where we have been working on building our businesses even bigger and bigger. And we just hit it off because when we started talking AI, we could not stop talking about it. So I thought, how amazing would it be to have Patty here on the show so you can hear some of the things that we've talked about? Well, hello, Patty, and welcome.
Hi, Amanda. Thank you so much for having me. I so appreciate you. I love your enthusiasm. I love how your style is just conversational, casual approach. I really appreciate that. So thank you for having me. It's going to be a great conversation.
Yes, my pleasure. And you know what? My favorite kind of podcasts to listen to are very conversational as well. So I appreciate that. And this whole conversation around AI, like, holy cow, I cannot even open my phone, like even before I swipe anywhere, there's something about AI, right? Like, and same in my inbox, it's literally flooded. It is the conversation. So what I was hoping we could maybe do today is just have, like you said, a real raw conversation just about AI for maybe the rest of us. Like if we're not necessarily living in Silicon Valley, or we're not like this big crazy guru from the mountaintop talking about AI, it's affecting everybody. It's like, it's really becoming, it is very disruptive in all senses of that word. But I'm just so curious, like, what do you think that the average small business owner, especially services business owners, should be keeping in mind in this season of AI?
Yeah, it's a really, really good question. And in fact, it's something that I'm talking a lot more about. I'm doing a lot of live speaking lately. And it's so fascinating because I'll get into these rooms with small business owners and I will ask the question, how many of you have played with any kind of AI? And so, more and more hands are raising now because people are getting really comfortable with chat GPT and whatnot. But there's a distinction here, because when I get into the space of like, how many of you are kind of frustrated with AI or are skeptical of, what's all this noise about? And inevitably, there are going to be some people, like I'll even see people in the crowd, arms crossed, they're like, it's so annoying. That's all anybody is talking about. But here's the thing. If we dispel the myth, I think that's the thing, and put context to the conversation and recognize that, first of all, AI isn't going anywhere. It is picking up steam, as you know, at an accelerated clip. And the cool thing about it is that it's very approachable for any small business owner, whether you're a solopreneur, a micro business, or you have, multi-millions, etc. Applies to everybody. The important thing here is to recognize, where can I build more leverage in my business by utilizing AI? That's what I like to talk about with small business owners, because then I'll give you the perspective. Anytime you're pushing things on the back burner that you don't want to deal with, understand that you're not doing those things because either it's mundane, it's boring, you avoid it like the plague because you don't want to do it. And the best part about it is that in a lot of cases, AI can help you with that.
You're reminding me of like back in, I don't know, 2007-ish, must have been like more like leading into 2010. Apple had those commercials that were like, there's an app for that. And now it's like, there's an AI for that, And it really is so amazing. I just got my hair cut. And on the weekend, I used an AI agent to go through the tedium of finding and booking hair appointments with my salon and my preferred hairdresser at my preferred time and my preferred cadence. And I'm booked out through the rest of the end of the year. And it was like something that I knew I wanted to do. But to your point, it was tedious. It was annoying. I've thought a dozen times about giving it to my assistant, but I'm just like, ugh, and Yeah, I mean, AI agent to the rescue got me all booked in, and I feel really good, and I know when my next appointments are.
Yes,
So
that's
yeah,
the
I
way
mean,
to
just find
see
fun
it.
ways to test it out and learn the functionality, and then you can take it to the more serious places in your business.
Absolutely. And that's the cool thing about it is that once we recognize just how many places it can really help out, and even if you think about it, like I know you work with a lot of coaches. And how many times have you heard, Amanda, where coaches are like, I just want to coach, right? I just want to
Oh my
coach. I just
God.
want to do my thing. Like all these other things that I'm doing in my business are just so annoying. I wish I didn't have to deal with it.
Hmm. Yeah, no, I hear it all the time, and it made me laugh because, um, yeah, I mean, we would all love to sit on the side of the pool sipping on a Mai Tai and make millions. Like that sounds amazing. However, if you are creating something of impact, you're probably going to have to do some work. So I'm curious, like for a service-based business, and especially if it's like a expertise-based service business, like consulting, coaching, creation, that sort of thing. What are you seeing as some of the top opportunities that people should waste zero time? Like, learn how to do this right now. What should
Yeah.
they be focusing
Yeah.
on?
Well, I'll say that one of the things I talk about almost ad nauseum, people are like, oh, there's that, you're talking about follow up again. But following up is one of the biggest opportunities, in my opinion,
Mm,
because when you understand what the metrics look like in terms of, well, let's say you do a presentation or you're doing a webinar or you're doing a local event, when you recognize that only 3% of the market is actually ready to buy right here and now, it really puts into perspective that the 97% of the people that you were talking to or you had the privilege to be around, they're not ready to buy yet. And so we have to nurture them. We have to build what I know KLT, know, like, and trust. And so the way to do that is to make sure to do it consistently. And when you have a system in place that's following up for you on your behalf, that is on brand, that is a reflection of your brand personality, that is moving people through from the point where they're kind of a suspect to the point where they're like, oh, tell me more, to the point where they're like, I'm ready to work with you now. How cool would it be to have AI deal with that, or to have AI manage that, I should say? Because here's the thing, most people are following up with their prospects maybe once or twice at best, and the high performing sales teams are doing it maybe 3 times. But when you understand that it takes 9, 10, 11 times follow ups in order for people to stop and pay enough attention to want to do business with you, you know that I'm telling you, I'll go into these speaking and 100% of the time, I'm like, who has a follow up strategy, right? Who is following up 9, 10, 11 times or more? Nobody ever raises their hand because nobody
oh my
has
God,
that
tell me
kind of
about it.
time to do it, you know?
Yeah, I mean, just like I think about things like email marketing, right? Which, especially with AI now, is so screaming easy to like not just write an email, but actually write a really good one that's compelling in a literal, actual fraction of the amount of time and cost that it used to take to do it. And yet people still are not necessarily prioritizing it. Something I was actually really worried when AI came on the scene for a hot minute. I was like, "Oh my God, goodbye coaching." And I love coaching. Like I love the human element of it and like it's my literal actual favorite. Thank goodness, because that's what I built my business around.
Yeah,
But I was like really worried about it because I was like, hey, is this going to be relevant, this whole thing? Because I could tell that these tools were getting so good at the conversational. They have access to the literal entire internet to make a custom answer for you. And it was like, whoa, that's really, really powerful. But here's what actually ended up happening that I'm like even more bullish on coaching and services businesses having quite a role is because people still want to engage and connect with people.
of
And what's
course.
happening is there's a lot of proliferation of the AI content, and you can just tell that people are like glazing over more, and ignoring even more because they're like, it's not real, it's not relatable. So you talk about building trust, and I could not agree more. There is a level of complacency, it appears, in terms of people programming what they're doing with the AI appropriately. So like nailing that brand voice, monitoring the results of the AI and not just letting it become a copy paste hot mess express. I've had some
Mm-hmm.
encounters with bots on DMs that I'm like, okay, no one, and I mean no one in real life uses a long M dash in their
Right.
response in message. So I'm like realizing that there's people that we're talking to that aren't even really people. So what what's your take or what's your perspective around the humanity and the human relationships and how augmenting with AI could work?
Yeah, I definitely think it's not an all or nothing proposition. In other words, you can't turn it all over to AI and think that it's all going to be fixed with AI. So I just had a really great conversation about this earlier. I was on another podcast actually, and I was talking about the fact that, like, what if the AI could get you 80% there? Meaning, yeah, it's going to give you some frameworks and guidance and whatnot, but it still requires that human touch in order for it to be truly on brand. And you're right. It's gotten to the point where people are starting to see the patterns and those cliche words or hyperbole or the M dashes, or it's not just like this, it's like that. I mean, there's just certain patterns that we're starting to pick up with AI.
Let's be real. That's another one.
Yeah,
Or the
exactly.
truth, you know, the truth is, right? Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And so it's now becoming, I can see why people are becoming so jaded. And so the problem is most people don't understand correct prompting. I think that's the first part of it. And if it's garbage in, you're going to have a garbage out. And a lot of times what happens is that people aren't prompting, say in ChatGPT, they're not putting in the right context. Right? So when you give AI proper context and more about you and your brand personality, or for example, I talk about, I'm sure you've heard of, Carl Jung's brand archetypes. Like what would copywriting be a reflection of if it were to say, well, what kind of a brand are you? Right? Are you a jester and a sage, or right? Or like the caregiver, right? And so you start to infuse personality in it. And Carl Jung's brand archetypes, you typically are a cross section of two brand archetypes. You want to give it a little something something. You want to give it some context so it's starting to understand you. But regardless of it, I'm still a huge advocate where an AI output with proper context and the proper role of how that GPT is going to play is going to give you a stronger output, but it's only going to get you, in my opinion, 80 to 90% there at best, meaning you still want to add your flavor. You still want to add your inputs, your stories. Now, the good thing about that is, for example, I have my own GPT that is only mine. When you have a paid GPT account, for example, ChatGPT account, it's $20 a month. You only want to infuse it with your own stories, your own searches, because it aggregates the knowledge base. Because what I recognized early on, my son was using my ChatGPT, and then I would use it, and I had a VA who was using it. I'm like, oh, it's all a garbled mess, and it was starting to give me weird output. So again,
It
you
had
want
a multiple.
it literally had multiple personality disorder. I'm like, I don't care about anime. It was because, my son was playing with it. And so there were just certain things that it was like picking up. I'm like, this isn't me. So I think that's a really good tip in and of itself, is have your own GPT. Don't let anybody else use it. Because the cool thing about it is, when you set it up right, it can really aggregate all of that intel to make it even stronger. The probability of the content and the outputs being stronger. But if it doesn't have the right context, you're going to get garbage out of it. And, as with anything, it's an art and a science. And there's dead giveaways when people don't know how to use it right.
Yeah, that's so true. And are there any practices you've developed or would recommend around building the data, building that database or building that reference material, um, and the reference outputs? And here's why I'm asking the question too, is I've noticed as I use the GPT, it definitely has a appeasement bias, right? Like it wants you to be appeased. So because I think one of the biggest issues with hyper dependence on AI and like taking some of the human out of it is, as a human, you have empathy, you have perspective, you know to ask like other questions. And I've noticed that AI can become a bit of an echo chamber. right? Because you're infusing it with your own perspective, your own data, the things you like, your preferences, and all of that kind of thing. So then when you make a new request, for example, and especially if you're in a growth orientation with your business or with your life, you ask the question, I'm noticing there's like this bias to saying something I'm likely to like, but not necessarily being like an objectively well-researched answer.
Yeah.
So I guess I kind of muddled the questions a little bit there because yes, it's data in and it's like getting that data and that data reinforcement. But how do you counterbalance that, or how do you make sure that you're capturing meaningful data and you're not tricking yourself into that, you know what I mean? Kind of that narcissistic ego. Um,
Yeah, where it's like, that
yeah,
was
like
so
you're not gonna
brilliant.
like stare at yourself and fall in and drown. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. So again, it goes into context because I'll tell you the first output that you get out of a ChatGPT thing, right? So, let's say you gave it a really good pre-frame, you fed the knowledge base with your stories. You want to make sure that the context of the role you want the GPT to play is really essential. Meaning I want you to be a contrarian in this, or I want you to be a thought leader with a contrarian perspective to push the envelope and challenge me with this thinking. Again, you want to have that role pre-framed before the prompting starts, really, right? Before the outputs, starts. Because I never accept the first output I get, right? I'm like, I always kind of like, I rate it. I'm like, okay, this answer is a 6 out of 10. I'm looking for level 10 work, do better, right? And it seems a little terse.
Great prompt. Listener, write that one down. That's a really good one. Yeah, that's a really good one.
Yeah, and challenge it and say, do better. I really want you to make me feel this output. Like, how does this relate? Or again, just push the envelope with it, because you're absolutely right, Amanda. What starts to happen is it becomes almost lazy. And it's like, you're the best, you're the greatest. And it's like, come on, this isn't, and I have colleagues in the mastermind that I'm in, they get really brash. They like use curse words back. They're like, this is, boatload of BS, and they'll just say, and they're like, they push the envelope. So I think a really good way to do that is to take or to challenge it with the responses. And then when the context is set up, make sure that the role is really stipulated. I'm not looking for nice responses. I'm looking at you to be the biggest challenger that you can. Imagine if it was like, Mark Cuban, or like embody the elements of Mark Cuban as he's like vetting a deal or something like that. Like really make it so that the GPT has a permission to really challenge the outputs and challenge what it's going to say to you. And it's going to give you stronger output for sure.
Absolutely. I love that. And you're reminding me of another, I don't want to call it a trick, but a technique that's helped me a lot. And it's funny because using AI, I've noticed that my communication skills have improved dramatically.
How so? I'm
with
curious.
real humans. Yeah, with real people.
Okay.
Because
That's
it
awesome.
made me so aware of where I shortcut my own language and where I use euphemisms instead of what I really mean, or vague terms and I'm non-specific. And so I've learned to become way more specific about exactly what I mean in my day-to-day language, which is amazing. It's like totally unintended side effect. But the technique that I was thinking about that has helped me a lot is setting the role, like telling them that, here's the role, here's the goal, but then asking questions, telling it to ask me the questions that it needs to do in order to give me 10 out of 10 work. And that's been a huge benefit to me as a communicator. And I think my team is benefiting from it because I'm better at delegating instruction and I'm better at knowing that I didn't say it clearly enough for somebody to be able to act on it with no question.
Yeah, that's super brilliant. And I do want to kind of anchor to that sentiment, because I really think if you have it, or just, it's almost like having a conversation, having a strategist with you and saying, what am I not thinking about with this particular approach? Right? You can problem solve with it if you're going into a tough negotiation, conflict resolution, or what have you. You can share the approach. And what starts to happen, which is really crazy, is that my particular GPT, again, because I have my own ChatGPT, nobody else touches it, it knows that I am an ENTJ. It knows my Enneagram. It knows all of those qualifications. So it would help me with the outputs that I would most probably say, if that makes any sense. Right? Because it understands my personality traits. And I challenge it. I'm like, what would be my disc profile? I know I'm a 99D, 99I. And then it knows my Enneagram. Like I said, it knows all of the things so that it's starting to get a better involvement protocol of how it's going to engage with me so that the outputs are that much stronger. And, you could do the same.
It's so good. It's so good. And Patty, I'm loving this conversation. How can we keep learning from you, or what's a good way to stay connected?
Well, my favorite is on LinkedIn. That's really my primary platform. You can look me up on LinkedIn. I'm happy to connect. I have a newsletter that I put out, and I'm always chiming on about what is happening in AI in a really easy to understand and conversational way. And then I also have something for your peeps. I have a great ChatGPT bundle. So I've studied copywriting for the past 8 years. I'm a super copywriting nerd and I absolutely love it. So I put together a ChatGPT that you can click and it'll help you with your copywriting, right? It's going to give you really well framed out copywriting. And then there's another GPT that helps you from a marketing strategy standpoint. And then there's a third GPT is most people are really bad at selling, and it would be really cool to give you some scripting so for example, you give it the context, who you're speaking to, what it is you're going to be talking about, and then the output is going to be a sales script that you can use to guide the conversation.
Okay, dear listener, this is so valuable. No kidding. To get this kind of information on tap and to be able to customize it to your preferences inside your own GPT, that is amazing, because each of these subject areas that Patty's listed here, I have personally run events and sold programs on the order of $5, $10, even $20,000 that we're teaching people, manually how to do some of these things. So this grab it and click it thing, very, very exciting. You've inspired another episode that I'm going to do. I'm going to do a solo episode very soon, and it's going to be about where coaching is going for AI, because I've been talking a lot about sort of the trust and the fear in this other episode, and thank you for inspiring it. Really, the punchline is going to be about how do you as a coach or an expert create experiences for people, right? Because that's going to be where I think the money is, honey. It's going to be in the experience, the community, the learning together, because we don't have to train the same way that we did to get some of the most amazing things done. And that's pretty cool. All right, Patty,
Amanda,
thank you so much for joining us today.
Yeah, thank you so much for the opportunity. And sorry, I didn't mean to talk over you. There's a little lag there. You nailed it. It's about moving people to experiences, the human collaboration, connection, community. That's exactly where it's going. So why not have AI help you with all the other stuff you don't want to do anymore?
Yeah, exactly. I love it. I love it so much. Okay. So, hey, listener, make sure that you hit subscribe before you go and grab the link, share it with 3 of your friends, especially your friends that have been AI curious. Make sure that they get this short episode so they can get up to speed on how to take some of the sting out of it and just make this tool work for them, just like it's working for millionaires and billionaires around the world. And go ahead and leave a review for the show if you haven't already. Really appreciate it, because when somebody's considering whether to listen to the show, meet people like Patty, they do look at those reviews. So we always appreciate you taking 30 seconds to do one. All right. Thank you so much, everybody. And we will see you on the next episode. And until then, do what matters.